She was just a small-town girl, forced to marry a powerful, older CEO. The real reason. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. She was just a farm girl from the countryside, fighting to save her family's 200-year legacy. He was a powerful CEO with a $25 million company and a secret that would change everything. When the bank threatened foreclosure and developers circled like vultures, Amelia Hayes thought she had exhausted every option. Then Stephen Thorne called with a proposal that defied every expectation. "Marry me," he said, "and save your farm." But this was no fairy tale romance. This was business. Pure, calculated, strategic business. What Amelia did not know was that Stephen carried a burden from 30 years ago, a family secret that connected their histories in ways neither could imagine. As corporate contracts became personal conversations and business meetings became shared dreams, something unexpected began growing in the rich soil of mutual respect. The real shock was not his proposal. The real shock was discovering that sometimes the heart's wisest decisions begin in the mind, and the most powerful love stories are built on the strongest foundations. "Daddy, we need to talk." Amelia Hayes pushed open the screen door of the farmhouse kitchen, her boots still caked with morning mud from checking the irrigation lines. The familiar scent of her father's coffee mingled with the weight of the manila folder in her hands, filled with numbers that spelled the end of everything their family had built. Robert Hayes looked up from his newspaper, his weathered face creasing with concern. At 62, he had seen enough storms to recognize the particular set of his daughter's shoulders that meant serious trouble. "The bank called again yesterday," Amelia said, settling into the chair across from him. She spread the financial statements across the pine table her great-grandmother had brought from Ireland. "We have 4 months, Daddy. 4 months to come up with $800,000, or Hayes family farm becomes a memory." The silence stretched between them, like the morning shadows across their fields. Robert set down his coffee cup with the deliberate care of a man absorbing a blow. "800,000 day," he repeated, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "For the irrigation system." "For everything," Amelia corrected, pulling out the detailed breakdown she had prepared. "The precision drip irrigation, the soil monitoring technology, the renewable energy infrastructure. Without it, we cannot compete with the industrial operations. Without it, the next drought will finish what the last 2 started." Robert studied his daughter's face, seeing his late wife Margaret in the determined set of her green eyes, 28 years old, and Amelia carried the weight of 6 generations on her shoulders. She had returned home from college 6 years ago when Margaret was diagnosed with cancer, setting aside her own dreams to learn every aspect of farming from soil composition to market analysis. "What about the development companies?" Robert asked, though he already knew the answer from her expression. Sterling Development increased their offer to $3.2 million for the entire property. Amelia's voice remained professional, but her father caught the slight tightening around her eyes. "They want to build a subdivision called Heritage Hills. They promise to keep the farmhouse as a historical centerpiece." "A museum piece," Robert said bitterly. "A prop," Amelia agreed. "Surrounded by houses where people can pretend they live in the country while ordering groceries online and complaining about the rooster crowing at dawn." She pulled out another document, this one bearing the letterhead of Morrison, Patterson and Associates. "Frank Morrison says we could also consider a partnership with Agricorp Industries. They would maintain some crop production, but it would be conventional farming. No more organic certification, no more direct sales to local restaurants, no more farmers' market, no more Hayes family farm," Robert said quietly. "Just Hayes family land, with someone else's vision planted in it." Amelia reached across the table and covered her father's calloused hand with her own. There has to be another way, Daddy. I know the numbers look impossible, but we have built something special here. The soil health, the crop diversity, the relationships with our buyers. This is not just a business, it is a living legacy. Robert squeezed her hand, remembering the day 24 years ago when 5-year-old Amelia had planted her first tomato seedling, insisting it needed a good morning kiss every day to grow properly. Your mother always said you had more determination than sense, he said with a gentle smile. She would have been proud of how you have grown this operation, the organic certification, the sustainable practices, the farmer education programs. You have done things we never imagined possible. But determination does not pay bank loans, Amelia said, pulling her hand back to organize the papers. I have applied for every agricultural grant available. I have spoken with 3 different credit unions. I even contacted that venture capital firm that specializes in sustainable agriculture, but they want 60% ownership in exchange for their investment. 60% means they control everything, Robert observed. Everything, Amelia confirmed. Our planting decisions, our marketing strategies, our hiring choices. We would be employees on our own land. The kitchen fell quiet, except for the tick of the clock above the sink, a wedding gift to Robert's parents in 1972. Through the window, they could see the morning sun illuminating rows of heirloom tomatoes, heritage corn, and the experimental herb garden where Amelia tested new varieties for the restaurant trade. "What does your heart tell you to do?" Robert asked, using the question he had posed throughout her childhood whenever she faced difficult decisions. Amelia looked out at the land that had shaped her identity before she could walk. "My heart says fight. My heart says there has to be someone out there who understands what we are trying to accomplish, someone who values sustainability over pure profit margins. Then we keep looking," Robert said, standing to pour himself another cup of coffee. "But Amelia, I need you to promise me something." "What?" "If we cannot find a solution that preserves what your mother and I built here, do not let pride destroy your future. This land is important, but you are more important. Do not sacrifice your life for a legacy that might be meant to end with us." Amelia felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them away. Crying was a luxury she could not afford with 4 months remaining on the countdown clock. "I promise, Daddy," she said, though they both knew she was not sure she could keep that promise if the time came. The phone rang, cutting through the emotional weight of the moment. Amelia glanced at the caller identification display, frowning at the unfamiliar number with a Chicago area code. "Hayes Family Farm, this is Amelia," she answered, expecting another sales call or survey request. "Miss Hayes, this is Stephen Thorne from Thorne Agricultural Solutions. I hope I'm not calling too early." The voice was professional but warm, with the kind of confidence that came from genuine knowledge rather than practiced sales techniques. Amelia glanced at her father, who raised his eyebrows in silent question. "Not too early, Mr. Thorne. How can I help you?" "Actually, Miss Hayes, I believe I might be able to help you. I have been following your work with heritage seed preservation and sustainable soil management. Your operation has gained quite a reputation among agricultural professionals." Amelia felt her pulse quicken. In 6 years of running the farm, she had learned to distinguish between genuine interest and sales pitches within the first 30 seconds of conversation. This sounded different. "I appreciate the compliment, Mr. Thorne, but I should be upfront. If you are looking to purchase our land, we are not interested in selling to developers." Stephen's laugh was genuine, lacking the practiced quality of corporate politeness. "Miss Hayes, I am not a developer. I am an agricultural technology specialist. My company partners with family farms to implement sustainable growing solutions. I would very much like to discuss how we might work together." Amelia looked at her father, who had moved closer to listen. His expression had shifted from resignation to cautious interest. "What kind of partnership are you talking about, Mr. Thorne?" "The kind that preserves family ownership while providing the capital and technology needed for long-term sustainability. Would you be available for a meeting sometime this week? I would prefer to discuss the details in person, and I would very much like to see your operation firsthand." For the first time in months, Amelia felt a flutter of hope in her chest. "When would work for your schedule? I could drive down tomorrow afternoon, if that suits you. I promise I will not take up more than an hour of your time unless you are genuinely interested in what I have to propose." Amelia looked at the financial statements spread across the table, then at her father's encouraging nod. "Tomorrow afternoon would be perfect, Mr. Thorne. Should I prepare anything specific for your visit? Just be prepared to show me why Hayes Family Farm deserves to continue thriving for another 200 years. Stephen said. "I have a feeling you will not have any trouble with that assignment." After hanging up, Amelia sat in silence for a long moment, staring at the phone as if it might provide additional clues about this unexpected opportunity. "Well," Robert prompted. "I think," Amelia said slowly, "that tomorrow might be very interesting." Amelia spent the evening researching Thorne Agricultural Solutions, and what she found impressed her more than she wanted to admit. The company had started as a small agricultural consulting firm 15 years ago and grown into a regional leader in sustainable farming technology. Their client testimonials read like a catalogue of family farm success stories, with increased yields, reduced environmental impact, and improved profitability. Most compelling were the photographs on their website showing Stephen Thorne himself working alongside farmers. His expensive suits traded for work clothes, his hands dirty with the same soil that sustained their livelihoods. This was not a desk-bound executive looking for quick profits. The next afternoon, Amelia watched from her kitchen window as a silver pickup truck turned into their gravel driveway. Not the luxury sedan she had expected, but a working vehicle with mud on the wheel wells and equipment secured in the bed. Stephen Thorne stepped out, and Amelia felt an unexpected flutter of nervousness. He was taller than she had imagined, probably 6 feet 2 inches, with dark brown hair that showed early traces of silver at the temples. His blue eyes surveyed their property with the focused attention of someone who understood what he was seeing. He had dressed appropriately for a farm visit, wearing khakis and a button-down shirt that looked expensive but practical. His handshake was firm without being aggressive, and his smile reached his eyes in a way that suggested genuine pleasure at meeting her. "Miss Hayes, thank you for making time to see me," he said. "Your property is even more impressive than I expected." "Please, call me Amelia," she replied, surprised by how comfortable his presence felt. "Would you like to see the operation before we talk business?" "I would like nothing better." For the next hour, they walked through every section of the farm. Stephen asked informed questions about soil composition, crop rotation schedules, and organic certification requirements. He examined their current irrigation system with the eye of someone who understood both its strengths and limitations. Most impressively, he listened more than he talked. When Amelia explained their heritage seed preservation program, he asked thoughtful follow-up questions. When she showed him the experimental plots where they tested drought-resistant varieties, he knelt to examine the soil structure with obvious appreciation. "You have built something remarkable here," Stephen said, as they concluded the tour near the main farmhouse. "The soil health alone represents decades of careful stewardship." "My parents started the transition to organic methods 30 years ago," Amelia replied. "People thought they were crazy to give up chemical fertilizers and pesticides." "Visionaries often appear crazy to people who cannot see beyond next quarter's profits," Stephen observed. Your parents were ahead of their time. Now the market is catching up to their wisdom. They settled on the front porch, where Robert joined them with glasses of lemonade made from lemons grown in their greenhouse. Stephen accepted the drink with thanks and took a sip before speaking. Amelia, I'm going to be direct with you because I respect your intelligence and your time. I know you are facing financial pressure that threatens this operation. I believe I have a solution that could benefit both of us, but it is unconventional enough that you will need to hear me out completely before deciding whether I have lost my mind. Amelia felt her pulse quicken. I am listening. Stephen set down his lemonade and looked directly into her eyes. I would like to propose a business marriage. The silence that followed was so complete that Amelia could hear the bees working in her mother's flower garden 20 feet away. I beg your pardon, she finally managed. A legal marriage that combines our business entities, Stephen continued, his voice steady and professional. It would create a joint limited liability company with significant tax advantages, agricultural grants, eligibility, and investment opportunities that neither of us could access individually. Robert leaned forward in his chair. Son, are you proposing to my daughter? Sir, I am proposing a strategic business partnership that happens to take the legal form of marriage, Stephen replied. Amelia would maintain complete operational control of Hayes family farm. My company would provide the capital and technology needed for sustainable growth. The marriage structure protects the property from foreclosure and ensures the Hayes family legacy continues indefinitely. Amelia stared at him, wondering if the stress of the past months had finally caused her to hallucinate. Mr. Thorne, are you seriously suggesting that I marry you to save my farm? I am suggesting that two intelligent business people consider an unconventional solution to a problem that conventional approaches have not solved, Stephen replied. We would maintain separate residences, independent personal lives, and clear contractual boundaries. This would be a professional partnership with personal legal protection. Like a very elaborate business card, Amelia said faintly. Like a very effective business strategy, Stephen corrected, one that preserves everything you have built while providing the resources needed for future growth. Robert cleared his throat. What exactly would you get out of this arrangement, Mr. Thorne? Access to the most innovative, sustainable farming operation in the region, Stephen replied without hesitation. A testing ground for agricultural technologies that could revolutionize how we approach environmental stewardship, and the satisfaction of ensuring that Hayes Family Farm continues inspiring other farmers for another 200 years. Amelia looked at her father, then back at Stephen. This is the most unusual business proposal I have ever heard. The most effective solutions often are, Stephen said, but I understand this requires careful consideration. I have prepared a preliminary contract outline that addresses every legal and financial question you might have. Would you be willing to review it with your attorney before making any decisions? You have already had contracts drawn up, Amelia asked. I have had preliminary documents prepared, Stephen clarified, but nothing becomes binding until you decide this makes sense for your family and your future. Amelia stood and walked to the porch railing, looking out over the land that had defined her entire life. The evening sun cast golden light across the fields where 6 generations of her family had planted their dreams and harvested their hopes. Mr. Thorne, she said without turning around, if I agree to review your proposal, what happens next? You consult with your attorney, your accountant, and anyone else whose opinion you value. If the numbers make sense and the legal protections satisfy your concerns, we proceed with a trial partnership period to ensure we can work together effectively. And if we cannot work together, Then we dissolve the marriage and the business partnership with clear terms that protect your interests and leave you in a stronger financial position than you are today." Amelia turned back to face him. "You would do that, invest in our operation with no guarantee of return?" Stephen met her gaze steadily. "Amelia, I believe in what you are doing here. I believe sustainable agriculture is not just the future of farming. It is essential for our survival as a species. Supporting your work is not a risk. It is an investment in the kind of future I want to help create." The sincerity in his voice convinced her more than any contract terms could. This man understood not just the business of farming, but the heart of it. "I will review your proposal," she said finally, "but I cannot promise anything beyond that." Stephen smiled, and for the first time since he had arrived, it was not his professional smile, but something warmer and more genuine. "That is all I can ask for. Thank you for giving me the chance to present this opportunity." As they shook hands goodbye, Amelia felt the calluses on his palm that proved he was more than just a corporate executive. Whatever else this Stephen Thorne might be, he was a man who understood the value of work. After his truck disappeared down the driveway, she and her father sat in comfortable silence as the sun finished setting over their fields. "Well, Daddy," Amelia said finally, "tomorrow should be very interesting." "Indeed it should," Robert agreed. "Indeed it should." The law offices of Morrison, Patterson and Associates occupied the second floor of a brick building that had housed attorneys for nearly as long as the Hayes family had farmed their land. Frank Morrison, now 58 and graying at the temples, had handled every major legal matter for 3 generations of Hayes family members. Amelia sat across from Frank's mahogany desk, Stephen's proposal spread between them like a map to uncharted territory. She had spent 2 sleepless nights reading every word, every clause, every subsection of the preliminary contract, and the more she studied it, the more impressed she became with its thoroughness. "Frank, I need you to tell me if this man is trying to take advantage of our situation," she said, pushing the documents toward her family attorney. Frank adjusted his reading glasses and began reviewing the proposal with the methodical attention that had made him one of the most respected legal minds in the county. Occasionally he made notes in the margins, or referenced specific statutes in the agricultural law books that lined his office walls. After 45 minutes of careful study, Frank leaned back in his chair and removed his glasses. "Amelia, in 32 years of practicing law, I have never seen anything quite like this," he said. "But I can tell you with complete confidence that this contract is not only legally sound, it is structured to protect your interests in ways that are frankly remarkable." "What do you mean?" Frank picked up the document and flipped to a section highlighted in yellow. "Look at paragraph 12. In the event of divorce or dissolution of the business partnership, you retain full ownership of the Hayes family farm property, all improvements made during the marriage, and a cash settlement equivalent to 50% of any increase in property value." "That seems fair," Amelia said cautiously. "Fair?" Frank laughed. "Amelia, that clause means if this partnership increases your property value from its current assessment of $2.8 million to, say, $4 million, you would receive a $600,000 settlement on top of keeping everything you started with." Amelia blinked. "He structured it so that I benefit financially even if the marriage ends." "More than that," Frank continued, turning to another page. "Paragraph 18 specifies that all agricultural improvements, technology installations, and infrastructure development remain with the property regardless of the partnership outcome. He is essentially guaranteeing that Hayes Family Farm will be worth more when this arrangement ends than it is today, whether that is in 1 year or 20 years. "What about his protections?" Amelia asked. "What does he get if things do not work out?" Frank scanned several more pages before responding. His company retains ownership of any proprietary technology or equipment, and he can recover his initial investment if the partnership dissolves within the first 2 years. After that, he accepts whatever loss might occur as a business risk. A business risk of $800,000, plus whatever additional investments he makes in infrastructure and technology, Frank confirmed. Amelia, either this man is extraordinarily confident in your operation's potential, or he has motivations beyond pure profit. Amelia thought about Stephen's questions during his farm visit, the way he had examined their soil with genuine appreciation, the respect in his voice when he talked about sustainable agriculture. "What about the marriage itself?" she asked. "The personal aspects?" Frank turned to the section addressing personal boundaries and responsibilities. The contract specifies separate residences, independent social lives, and clearly defined professional interactions. You would be legally married but practically business partners. The only shared responsibility would be filing joint tax returns, which provides significant advantages for agricultural businesses. "It sounds almost too good to be true," Amelia said. "In my experience, when something sounds too good to be true, it is worth investigating very carefully," Frank replied. "So I took the liberty of researching Mr. Thorne and his company yesterday afternoon." He pulled out a folder containing printed pages from various websites and business publications. Thorne Agricultural Solutions has been in business for 15 years with an exemplary reputation. Their client satisfaction ratings are outstanding, and I found 3 separate articles in agricultural trade magazines praising their ethical business practices and innovative partnership models. What about Stephen himself? 35 years old, MBA from Northwestern University, inherited the company from his father 8 years ago and has grown it from a small consulting firm to a regional leader. No history of lawsuits, bankruptcies, or questionable business dealings. He sits on the board of 2 agricultural sustainability non-profits and has been a keynote speaker at several farming conferences. Frank set the research aside and looked directly at Amelia. "Based on everything I can determine, Stephen Thorne is exactly what he appears to be, a successful businessman with a genuine commitment to sustainable agriculture and ethical business practices." "So you think I should accept his proposal?" "I think you should consider it very seriously," Frank replied, "but I also think you should understand what you would be agreeing to. This is not a traditional business partnership or a traditional marriage. It is something entirely new, and new arrangements require careful thought about long-term implications." Amelia stood and walked to Frank's window, which looked out over the town square, where her great-grandmother had sold vegetables from a horse-drawn cart 90 years ago. "Frank, what would my parents think about this?" The older attorney smiled. "Your mother would want to know if you trusted him. Your father would want to know if the arrangement served the greater good. And both of them would want to know if it felt right in your heart." "It feels practical," Amelia said. "It feels like the kind of creative solution that could actually work." "But does it feel right?" Amelia considered the question seriously. "I think it feels like hope," she said finally, "and I have not felt hopeful about the farm's future in a very long time." Frank gathered the contract pages into a neat stack. "Then I suggest you call Mr. Thorne and tell him you would like to proceed to the next stage of discussion, which is meeting with both attorneys present to finalize terms, establishing a timeline for implementation, and determining how you want to announce this arrangement to your community." Amelia felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. "Frank, am I making the right decision?" "Amelia, you are making an intelligent decision based on careful analysis and professional advice. Whether it turns out to be the right decision will depend on factors none of us can predict. But I can tell you this. Doing nothing is guaranteed to result in losing the farm. This proposal gives you a fighting chance to save it." That afternoon, Amelia called Stephen's office and asked to schedule another meeting. His assistant, Sarah Williams, was warm and professional, suggesting several times that would work for Stephen's schedule. "Miss Hayes," Sarah said before ending the call, "I hope you do not mind me saying this, but Mr. Thorne has been unusually excited about this project since returning from your farm. I've worked for him for 15 years, and I've never seen him so personally invested in a partnership opportunity." "What do you mean by personally invested?" Amelia asked. "He has spent hours researching heritage seed preservation and organic soil management. He ordered 3 books about sustainable farming practices and has been reading them during his lunch breaks. Yesterday, he spent 2 hours on the phone with agricultural engineers discussing precision irrigation systems." After hanging up, Amelia felt a warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with the business advantages of Stephen's proposal. The idea that he had spent his own time learning about her work, that he cared enough to educate himself about her methods and challenges, touched something deeper than professional respect. For the first time since this extraordinary situation had begun, Amelia allowed herself to wonder what it might be like to work closely with someone who understood and appreciated what she was trying to accomplish. The thought should have been purely professional, but as she prepared for their next meeting, she caught herself wondering what other surprises Stephen Thorne might have in store. 3 days later, Amelia found herself sitting in Frank Morrison's conference room across from Stephen Thorne and his attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia Chen, who specialized in agricultural business law. The final contract, now 47 pages of precisely worded legal language, lay between them like a bridge connecting 2 different worlds. "Before we sign anything," Stephen said, "I want to make sure you are completely comfortable with every aspect of this arrangement, Amelia. This is not just a business decision, it is a life decision, and I need to know you are entering it with complete confidence." Amelia studied his face, looking for any hint of doubt or hidden agenda. What she saw was the same genuine concern that had impressed her during his farm visit. "I have 2 questions," she said. "First, why are you willing to take such a significant financial risk on an operation you have known about for less than a week?" Stephen leaned back in his chair, considering his answer carefully. "Because in 15 years of working with farms across the Midwest, I have never seen an operation that combines innovation with tradition as effectively as yours. Your soil health metrics are exceptional, your crop diversity is remarkable, and your customer loyalty is something most businesses spend years trying to develop." "That explains the business logic," Amelia said, "but not the personal commitment." Stephen was quiet for a long moment. "My father spent his entire career in agriculture, and his greatest regret was that he focused so much on short-term profits that he sometimes lost sight of long-term sustainability. When he died, he left behind a company that was successful but not necessarily meaningful. I want to build something different." The sincerity in his voice convinced Amelia more than any financial projection could have. "What is my second question?" she asked with a slight smile. "You said you had 2 questions." "Right." Amelia felt her cheeks warm with embarrassment. "My second question is what happens if we discover we cannot work together effectively? I mean the day-to-day reality of running a business partnership. Then we dissolve the arrangement with dignity and mutual respect," Stephen replied without hesitation. "The contract includes a 6-month trial period during which either of us can end the partnership with 30 days' notice. After 6 months, the dissolution process requires 90 days' notice and mediation to ensure fair resolution of any disputes." Patricia Chen, Stephen's attorney, leaned forward. "Miss Hayes, I want to emphasize that my client has insisted on contractual protections for you that go far beyond standard business partnerships. He has specifically structured this arrangement to minimize your risk while maximizing your potential benefit. Frank Morrison nodded agreement. I have reviewed every clause multiple times, Amelia. This contract protects your interests in ways that are frankly unprecedented in my experience. Amelia looked around the table at the three legal professionals who had spent days ensuring every detail was properly addressed. Then she looked at Stephen, who was waiting patiently for her decision without any pressure or sales tactics. Stephen, she said, I want you to know that I am not accepting this proposal out of desperation. I am accepting it because I believe you understand what Hayes Family Farm represents, and I trust that you will help me preserve and strengthen that legacy. Stephen's smile was warm and genuine. Amelia, I cannot think of a greater honor than being trusted with something that means so much to you and your family. They signed the contracts with Frank and Patricia serving as witnesses. The legal ceremony was brief and businesslike, but as Amelia wrote her signature on the final page, she felt as though she was signing not just a business agreement, but a declaration of faith in possibilities she had never imagined. When do we make this official? Amelia asked as they gathered the signed documents. The marriage license can be obtained as early as tomorrow, Patricia replied. Illinois requires a one-day waiting period, so you could have a civil ceremony by Thursday if you prefer to move quickly. What about announcing it to the community? Amelia asked. People are going to have questions about a marriage that appears so sudden. Stephen considered this. What if we tell people the truth, that we met through business, discovered we share common values and goals, and decided that combining our professional and personal lives made sense for both of us? That is actually true, Amelia realized. We did meet through business, and we do share values and goals. And the personal aspect will develop naturally as we work together, Stephen added. We are not lying to anyone, we are just not explaining every detail of the legal structure. Frank Morrison cleared his throat. I should point out that as your attorney, I'm required to remind you that marriage is a serious legal commitment regardless of the business motivations. You will be legally responsible for each other in ways that extend beyond your written contract. What kind of responsibilities? Amelia asked. Medical decision-making authority if one of you becomes incapacitated, inheritance rights unless specifically excluded by will, potential liability for each other's debts in certain circumstances, Frank explained. These are standard marriage implications that your business contract cannot completely override. Amelia felt a flutter of nervousness, but when she looked at Stephen, his expression was thoughtful rather than concerned. Frank raises important points, Stephen said. Perhaps we should include additional documentation to address these issues specifically. Already done, Patricia said, pulling out 2 more documents. These are healthcare directives and financial liability limitations. They ensure that both of you retain control over personal medical and financial decisions while married. After signing the additional paperwork, the 4 of them stood in Frank's conference room, surrounded by the legal architecture of the most unusual business arrangement any of them had ever negotiated. Well, Amelia said, I suppose we are going to be married. I suppose we are, Stephen agreed. Are you nervous? Terrified, Amelia admitted, but also excited. For the first time in months, I feel like Hayes Family Farm has a real future. It does, Stephen said confidently, and I am honored to be part of helping you build it. As they prepared to leave, Frank pulled Amelia aside for a private word. You know, I never asked you the most important question, he said quietly. Which is, do you like him? Amelia glanced across the room where Stephen was discussing irrigation technology with Patricia, his face animated with genuine enthusiasm. Yes, she said, surprised by how easily the answer came. "I think I do." "Good," Frank said with satisfaction. "Because, in my experience, business partnerships work much better when the partners actually enjoy each other's company." Walking to their cars after the meeting, Amelia and Stephen moved with the slightly awkward awareness of two people whose relationship had just fundamentally changed. "So," Stephen said as they reached Amelia's truck, "what happens now?" "Now we get married and see if we can save a farm," Amelia replied. "Are you ready for that adventure?" Stephen's smile was answer enough, but he spoke anyway. "Amelia, I have never been more ready for anything in my life." As she drove home through the countryside that had shaped her entire existence, Amelia felt a combination of anticipation and determination that reminded her of planting season. The nervous excitement of placing seeds in the ground and trusting that with proper care, something wonderful would grow. Tomorrow, she would become Mrs. Stephen Thorne. In 3 days, they would officially combine Hayes Family Farm with Thorne Agricultural Solutions. And sometime in the months ahead, they would discover whether two people who barely knew each other could build something extraordinary together. The sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and pink as Amelia turned into her family's driveway. And for the first time in years, the future felt full of promise rather than fear. The marriage ceremony lasted exactly 12 minutes in Judge Patricia Wilson's chambers, with Frank Morrison and Sarah Williams serving as witnesses. Amelia wore her mother's pearl earrings and a simple blue dress she had bought specifically for the occasion. Stephen wore a charcoal grey suit that somehow managed to look both professional and personal. "Do you, Stephen James Thorne, take Amelia Rose Hayes to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Judge Wilson asked. "I do," Stephen replied, his voice steady and sure. "Do you, Amelia Rose Hayes, take Stephen James Thorne to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Amelia looked into Stephen's blue eyes and saw the same mixture of determination and nervousness she felt herself. "I do. By the power vested in me by the state of Illinois, I now pronounce you husband and wife." They exchanged rings they had selected together the day before, simple gold bands that would serve their practical purpose without drawing unwanted attention. When Judge Wilson invited Stephen to kiss his bride, he leaned forward and pressed a gentle, respectful kiss to Amelia's cheek. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Thorne," the judge said with a warm smile. "May your partnership bring you both great happiness and success." Walking out of the courthouse as legally married business partners, Amelia felt the surreal quality of her new reality settling over her like morning mist. She was now Amelia Hayes Thorne, though she would continue using her maiden name professionally to maintain continuity with their customer base. "How do you feel?" Stephen asked as they reached their vehicles. "Like I just stepped through a door into a completely different life," Amelia replied honestly. "How do you feel?" "Honored," Stephen said without hesitation, and excited to get started on the real work. The real work began the following Monday, when Stephen arrived at Hayes Family Farm at 7:30 in the morning, dressed in work clothes and carrying a travel mug of coffee. Amelia was already in the greenhouse, checking on the seedlings they were preparing for the fall planting season. "Good morning, husband," she said with a slight smile, testing out the word. "Good morning, wife," Stephen replied, and they both laughed at the strangeness of it. "Where would you like to start?" Amelia asked, gesturing toward the operations board where she tracked daily tasks and seasonal priorities. "With learning your systems," Stephen said. "I want to understand exactly how you manage everything before we start implementing changes." For the next 2 weeks, Stephen shadowed Amelia through every aspect of farm operations. He learned her crop rotation schedules, studied her soil management techniques, and observed her interactions with the seasonal workers who helped during planting and harvest seasons. Most importantly, he listened. When Amelia explained why she chose certain heritage seed varieties, Stephen asked thoughtful questions and took notes. When she demonstrated her organic pest management methods, he watched with the focused attention of someone genuinely interested in understanding her expertise. "You know," Amelia said one afternoon as they finished inspecting the tomato fields, "I expected you to want to change things immediately." "Why would I want to change a system that works?" Stephen asked, pulling off his work gloves. "My job is to enhance what you have built, not replace it." That evening, they sat on the farmhouse porch, reviewing the preliminary designs for the new irrigation system. Stephen had spread detailed blueprints across the table, explaining how precision drip irrigation would reduce water usage by 40% while increasing crop yields. "The beauty of this system," Stephen said, pointing to the technical specifications, "is that it works with your existing field layout. We are not changing your farming methods, we are making them more efficient." Amelia studied the diagrams, impressed by how thoroughly Stephen had researched her specific needs. "How long will installation take?" 6 weeks if we start next month," Stephen replied. "We will work section by section so we do not disrupt your current operations." "What about the cost?" Stephen named a figure that made Amelia's eyes widen. "That is $200,000 more than our original budget estimate. The additional cost covers expanded renewable energy infrastructure," Stephen explained. "Solar panels and wind turbines that will make your operation completely energy independent within 3 years. Stephen, that is an enormous investment." "It is an investment in the future," Stephen said simply. "In 5 years, your energy independence will save more than the additional cost. In 10 years, it will be pure profit." Amelia looked at the man who had been her husband for exactly 17 days and felt a flutter of something deeper than professional appreciation. "Why are you so committed to making this work?" Stephen was quiet for a moment, watching the sun set over the fields they would soon transform together. "Because this is exactly the kind of operation that proves sustainable agriculture is not just environmentally necessary, it is economically superior. Your success will inspire other farmers to make similar changes." "So we are guinea pigs in your sustainability experiment?" Amelia asked with a teasing smile. "You are pioneers," Stephen corrected seriously. "And I am honored to help you blaze the trail." That night, after Stephen had returned to his apartment in town, Amelia found herself thinking about the way he had said the word honored. There had been no corporate polish in his voice, just genuine reverence for what they were building together. For the first time since their unusual arrangement had begun, she allowed herself to wonder what it would be like if their partnership extended beyond business hours. The installation of the irrigation system began on a crisp October morning with a crew of 12 technicians and engineers from Stephen's company. Amelia watched from her kitchen window as trucks and equipment transformed her familiar farmyard into something resembling a construction site. Stephen arrived early to supervise the work, but instead of remaining at a managerial distance, he worked alongside his crew, his expensive work clothes quickly acquiring the same mud and grass stains as everyone else's. "Your husband is not what I expected," said Margaret Chen, Amelia's best friend since childhood, who had stopped by to see the progress. "What did you expect?" Amelia asked, refilling Margaret's coffee cup. "Someone more corporate, more distant. He is out there digging trenches with his crew like he has been doing manual labor his entire life." Amelia watched Stephen demonstrate the proper technique for laying irrigation pipes to 2 younger workers. His movements were confident and practiced, suggesting this was not the first time he had done such work. He told me his father made him work construction summers during college, Amelia said. Apparently it was supposed to teach him the value of hard work. It seems to have worked, Margaret observed. But Amelia, I have to ask you something. What? Margaret turned from the window to face her friend directly. Are you falling for him? The question caught Amelia completely off guard. What do you mean? I mean the way you watch him when you think no one is looking, the way your voice changes when you talk about him, the way you smile when he does something that impresses you. Amelia felt heat rise in her cheeks. Margaret, this is a business arrangement. We barely know each other. That is not an answer to my question. Amelia looked out at Stephen, who was now consulting with the lead engineer about pipe placement angles. Even covered in mud and wearing a hard hat, he carried himself with the quiet confidence that had first impressed her during his visit to the farm. I respect him, Amelia said carefully. He is intelligent, hard-working, and he genuinely cares about sustainable agriculture. Still not an answer, Margaret said, with the persistence that had made her an excellent veterinarian and an occasionally annoying best friend. Fine, Amelia said, setting down her coffee cup with more force than necessary. Yes, I find him attractive. Yes, I enjoy his company. Yes, I think about him more than I should, given that our relationship is supposed to be purely professional. And that scares you. Terrifies me, Amelia admitted. Margaret, what if I am misreading his intentions? What if his kindness and attention are just good business practices? What if I develop feelings for someone who sees me as nothing more than a strategic partner? Margaret reached across the table and squeezed Amelia's hand. What if you are not misreading anything? What if he is developing feelings too? Before Amelia could respond, Stephen appeared at the kitchen door, knocking politely before entering. I apologize for interrupting, he said, nodding to Margaret. But I wanted to show you the progress on the main distribution lines. Of course, Amelia said, grateful for the interruption to her conversation with Margaret. Margaret, this is my husband, Stephen. Stephen, this is my best friend, Margaret Chen. Stephen's smile was genuine as he shook Margaret's hand. Amelia has mentioned you several times. You are the veterinarian who takes care of the livestock. Among other things, Margaret replied, studying Stephen with the direct gaze she usually reserved for diagnosing sick animals. Amelia tells me you are transforming this place into a model of agricultural sustainability. Amelia is doing the transforming, Stephen corrected. I'm just providing some tools to help her do it more efficiently. Margaret glanced at Amelia with raised eyebrows, and Amelia knew exactly what her friend was thinking. A man who deflected credit and praised his partner's contributions was not behaving like someone motivated purely by business interests. Let me show you what we have accomplished so far, Stephen said to Amelia, leading her outside to where the crew had installed nearly a quarter-mile of main distribution lines. For the next hour, Stephen walked her through every aspect of the installation, explaining how the system would monitor soil moisture levels and deliver precise amounts of water to different crops based on their specific needs. The control center will be installed in your office, Stephen said, pointing toward the farmhouse. You will be able to monitor and adjust the entire system from your computer or even from your phone when you're traveling. Traveling? Amelia asked. Where would I be traveling? Stephen paused, looking slightly embarrassed. I was hoping you might consider attending the Sustainable Agriculture Conference in Minneapolis next month. You would be perfect for their panel on heritage seed preservation. Stephen, I have never spoken at a professional conference, which is exactly why your perspective would be valuable, Stephen replied. You approach sustainability from the ground up, literally. Most speakers at these conferences are academics or consultants. You are a practitioner with real results to share. The idea of speaking publicly about her work was both terrifying and exciting. Would you be going to this conference? I was planning to attend, yes. I could introduce you to some people who might be interested in partnering with other family farms using your methods. Amelia looked around at the organized chaos of the installation work, imagining a future where Hayes Family Farm served as a model for sustainable operations across the region. "All right," she said. "I will do it." Stephen's smile was so bright it made something warm spread through Amelia's chest. "Really? Really? But I will need help preparing my presentation." "I would be honored to help you with that," Stephen said. And there was that word again, spoken with the same genuine reverence that made Amelia's heart skip slightly. That evening, after the work crew had finished for the day, Stephen lingered on the porch while Amelia prepared dinner. She had invited him to stay, telling herself it was simply practical since he had worked such a long day. "Can I ask you something personal?" Amelia said as they shared a meal of roast chicken and vegetables from her garden. "Of course." "Why did you never marry before this? I mean, a traditional marriage for personal reasons?" Stephen considered the question while cutting his chicken into precise pieces. "I suppose I never met anyone who understood what I was trying to accomplish with my work. Most of the women I dated saw my commitment to agricultural sustainability as either boring or obsessive. And now? Now I am married to someone who is even more committed to it than I am," Stephen said with a smile. "It is quite refreshing." Amelia felt that warm flutter in her chest again. "What about children? Did you ever want a family?" Stephen's expression grew more serious. "I always assumed I would have children someday, but I wanted to be sure I could provide them with the kind of stable, meaningful life my father provided for me." "And now?" Stephen met her gaze across the table. "Now, I think that being part of preserving something like Hayes Family Farm might be the most meaningful legacy anyone could leave for the next generation." The silence that followed was charged with unspoken possibilities. Amelia found herself imagining children running through the fields she and Stephen were transforming, learning about sustainable agriculture from parents who had built something extraordinary together. "Stephen," she said softly, "what are we doing?" "What do you mean?" "I mean this conversation, the way we work together, the way we look at each other when we think the other person is not paying attention." Stephen set down his fork and leaned back in his chair. "I think we are discovering that our business arrangement might be evolving into something more personal." "Is that what you want?" Amelia asked, her heart beating faster. "Yes," Stephen said without hesitation. "The question is whether it is what you want." Amelia looked at this man who had appeared in her life like an answer to prayers she had been afraid to voice. "Yes," she whispered, "but I am scared." "So am I," Stephen admitted. "But perhaps being scared together is better than being safe apart." He reached across the table and covered her hand with his. His touch was warm and gentle, and when Amelia looked into his eyes, she saw the same mixture of hope and vulnerability she felt herself. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we take it one day at a time," Stephen said. "We continue building our professional partnership, and we see where our personal connection leads us. And if it leads somewhere complicated," Stephen smiled. "Amelia, we are already somewhere complicated. We might as well enjoy the journey." The Sustainable Agriculture Conference in Minneapolis exceeded every expectation Amelia had allowed herself to form. Her presentation on heritage seed preservation received a standing ovation, and she found herself surrounded by farmers, researchers, and agricultural policy experts eager to learn more about her methods. "You were magnificent," Stephen said, as they walked through the hotel lobby after her panel discussion. "I have never seen an audience so engaged with a presentation." Amelia felt giddy with the success of her first public speaking experience. "I cannot believe how many people were interested in visiting the farm. We received 17 requests for site visits and 3 invitations to speak at other conferences. This is just the beginning, Stephen said. Your work is going to inspire changes across the entire agricultural industry. They celebrated with dinner at the hotel restaurant, where Stephen ordered a bottle of champagne to toast Amelia's triumph. The alcohol, combined with her excitement, made her feel bold in ways that normally would have frightened her. "Stephen," she said as they finished their dessert, "can I tell you something? Anything? 3 months ago, if someone had told me I would be married to a man I barely knew, speaking at professional conferences and planning to transform my family farm into a model sustainable operation, I would have thought they had lost their mind. And now I think it might be the best thing that ever happened to me." Stephen's expression grew serious. "Even the marriage part?" Amelia felt her cheeks warm, but she maintained eye contact, especially the marriage part. The silence that followed was electric with possibility. Stephen reached across the table and took her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles across her knuckles. "Amelia, I need you to know something." "What?" "This arrangement stopped being purely business for me weeks ago. Working with you, watching you speak today, seeing the passion you bring to everything you do, it has made me realize that I want more than a professional partnership." Amelia's heart began beating faster. "What kind of more?" "The kind where we share more than just business goals. The kind where I get to kiss my wife properly instead of just on the cheek." "Stephen, I know we agreed to keep things professional, but I cannot pretend anymore that my feelings for you are purely collegial." Amelia looked at this man who had saved her farm, believed in her vision, and somehow made her feel like the most fascinating woman in the world. "I cannot pretend either." "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I would very much like you to kiss me properly." Stephen's smile was tender as he leaned across the table. When his lips touched hers, Amelia felt like she was experiencing her first real kiss, despite being 28 years old. It was gentle and sweet and filled with the promise of everything their relationship could become. When they broke apart, Stephen rested his forehead against hers. "Amelia, I think I am falling in love with you." "I think I am falling in love with you too," she whispered back. They walked back to their hotel rooms, hand in hand, stopping outside Amelia's door with the awkward awareness of 2 people whose relationship had just fundamentally shifted. "We should probably talk about what this means," Stephen said. "Tomorrow," Amelia agreed. "Tonight, I just want to enjoy feeling this happy." Stephen kissed her goodnight, another gentle, perfect kiss that left Amelia feeling like she was floating as she prepared for bed. For the first time since their business arrangement had begun, she allowed herself to imagine a future where she and Stephen were partners in every sense of the word, building not just a successful farm, but a life together filled with shared dreams and mutual devotion. The thought should have terrified her, but instead it filled her with a contentment she had never experienced before. Tomorrow they would return to the farm as more than business partners, and Amelia could hardly wait to see what they would build together. The first thing Amelia noticed when they returned from Minneapolis was that Stephen had moved his office equipment into the unused bedroom on the 2nd floor of the farmhouse. The second thing she noticed was how right it felt to have his presence permanently woven into the daily rhythm of her home. "I hope you do not mind," Stephen said, gesturing toward the computers and filing cabinets he had installed. "It seemed more efficient than driving back and forth to town every day, and this way I can monitor the irrigation system in real time." "I do not mind at all," Amelia replied, and realized she meant it completely. Having Stephen working upstairs while she managed farm operations felt natural, like the final piece of a puzzle clicking into place. Their relationship had shifted into something warmer and more intimate since Minneapolis, though they continued to maintain separate bedrooms and respect each other's personal space. They shared meals, discussed business decisions as equal partners, and ended each day with conversations on the porch that grew longer and more personal as autumn deepened into winter. "Amelia," Stephen said one evening in late November as they reviewed the quarterly financial reports, "I have something I want to discuss with you." "Good news or challenging news?" she asked, looking up from the harvest yield calculations. "Potentially complicated news," Stephen replied, his expression unusually serious. "I received a call today from a documentary filmmaker who wants to feature Hayes Thorne Sustainable Farms in a series about innovative agriculture." "That sounds like good news to me. The complicated part is that they want to focus on our personal story as much as our business success. They are interested in the marriage aspect, the combination of tradition and technology, the partnership between a family farmer and an agricultural technology company." Amelia felt a flutter of nervousness. What would that involve? "Interviews with both of us, footage of our daily operations, probably some exploration of how we met and decided to combine our businesses." Stephen paused. "And our lives." "Stephen, we have been married for less than 4 months. Are we ready for that kind of public attention?" "That depends on how we define our relationship," Stephen said carefully. "If we are still primarily business partners who happen to be legally married, then probably not. But if we are genuinely building a life together—" He let the sentence hang in the air between them, and Amelia understood that he was asking her to define what they had become. "What do you think we are building?" she asked. Stephen moved closer to her on the couch, taking her hands in his. "I think we are building exactly what we told people we were building, a partnership based on shared values, mutual respect, and genuine affection that has grown into something deeper than either of us expected." "Something deeper," Amelia repeated. "Something that feels like love," Stephen said softly. "Something that feels like the kind of marriage I always hoped I might have someday." Amelia's heart began beating faster. "Are you asking me to make our marriage real in every sense?" "I am asking you to consider the possibility that it already is real and has been for some time." Amelia looked around the living room where they spent their evenings, at the photos of her family that Stephen had carefully preserved during his renovation work, at the stack of agricultural journals they read together, at the planning calendars where their personal and professional schedules had become completely intertwined. "Stephen, what if we are making a mistake? What if we are confusing partnership compatibility with romantic love? What if we are not?" Stephen countered. "What if this is exactly how real love is supposed to develop, gradually and naturally between two people who truly understand and appreciate each other?" Before Amelia could respond, Stephen's cell phone rang. He glanced at the caller identification and frowned. "I should take this," he said. "It is my attorney calling rather late." Amelia listened to Stephen's side of the conversation, which consisted mostly of "yes, I understand," and "when did this happen?" His expression grew increasingly troubled, and when he finally hung up, he looked genuinely distressed. "What is wrong?" Amelia asked. Stephen ran his hands through his hair. A gesture she had learned indicated serious stress. "There is a problem with some old business documents that need to be resolved. Patricia needs me to review some files from my father's era that might affect our current operations." "What kind of files?" "Property rights issues, apparently. Some legal matters that were not properly resolved when my father died." Stephen stood and began pacing, his agitation obvious. "I need to drive to Chicago tomorrow to go through my father's old files with Patricia." "Is it serious?" "It could be," Stephen said. but I do not want you to worry about it. Patricia says it is probably just paperwork that needs to be updated and refiled." Despite his reassurances, Amelia could see that Stephen was more concerned than he wanted to admit. "Do you want me to come with you?" "No," Stephen said quickly, then seemed to realize how abrupt he sounded. "I mean, thank you, but it will probably be very boring legal work. There is no reason for both of us to waste a day in attorneys' offices." That night, Amelia lay awake thinking about the documentary opportunity, and Stephen's suggestion that their marriage had already become real in every way that mattered. The idea filled her with equal measures of excitement and terror. She was still awake when she heard Stephen's car leaving before dawn for his drive to Chicago, and she spent the day wondering what kind of legal problems could make her normally unflappable husband look so worried. When Stephen returned that evening, he seemed even more troubled than when he had left. He was quiet during dinner, responding to her questions with distracted politeness that felt like a wall between them. "Stephen, what happened today?" Amelia finally asked as they cleared the dinner dishes. "Just old business complications," he said without meeting her eyes. "Nothing that affects our operations here." But Amelia could see that whatever Stephen had discovered in his father's files was affecting him deeply, and for the first time since their relationship had begun developing beyond business, she felt like he was keeping something important from her. That night, she heard him pacing in his room until well past midnight, and she fell asleep wondering what secrets from the past had the power to disturb her husband so profoundly. Stephen's distraction continued for the next 3 days, and Amelia found herself growing increasingly concerned about his uncharacteristic withdrawal from their usual easy communication. He continued to work on farm operations with his normal efficiency, but the warm, personal connection they had been building seemed to have frozen the moment he returned from Chicago. On Thursday afternoon, while Stephen was in town meeting with the irrigation system installers, Amelia decided to organize his office upstairs. She told herself she was simply being helpful, but truthfully, she was hoping to find some clue about what was troubling him so deeply. Most of Stephen's files were meticulously organized and clearly labeled, but she noticed a manila folder marked Hayes Water Rights 1994 that had been left on his desk. The folder was thick with legal documents, newspaper clippings, and what appeared to be personal correspondence. Amelia knew she should not look at Stephen's private business files, but the reference to her family name and the year 1994 was too intriguing to ignore. She opened the folder and began reading. The first document was a legal brief dated October 15, 1994, regarding a dispute over underground water rights between Thorne Agricultural Consulting and Hayes Family Farm. As Amelia read further, her confusion turned to shock, and then to something approaching betrayal. The water rights dispute had not been a simple legal misunderstanding, as Stephen had implied. According to the documents, Thomas Thorne had aggressively pursued control of the artesian well that had supplied the Hayes farm for over a century, using superior legal resources to challenge her grandfather's claim to water access. But the most devastating discovery was a letter dated March 3, 1995, written by Thomas Thorne to his attorney. In it, Stephen's father expressed regret about the legal action and his concern about the financial impact on the Hayes family. "I cannot help but feel we have taken something from the Hayes family that rightfully belonged to them," Thomas Thorne had written. "William Hayes is a good man trying to maintain a family operation that has been in his family for generations. Our legal victory feels hollow when I consider the cost to his family's future." Attached to the letter was a draft of another letter, this one addressed to her grandfather, expressing Thomas Thorne's desire to reach some accommodation that would restore the Hayes family's water access. The letter was marked "Never Sent" in Stephen's handwriting. The final document in the folder was dated just 3 months ago, a memorandum from Stephen to his attorney requesting research into appropriate restitution for historical injustice regarding Hayes' water rights. Amelia sat in Stephen's desk chair, staring at the documents that revealed the true reason for his interest in Hayes' family farm. His marriage proposal, his generous investment terms, his commitment to her success, it was all driven by guilt over his family's past actions against hers. She heard Stephen's truck in the driveway and quickly returned the folder to exactly where she had found it. By the time he reached his office, she was downstairs in the kitchen, struggling to process what she had discovered. "How was your day?" Stephen asked, appearing in the kitchen doorway with the same distracted politeness he had shown since returning from Chicago. "Fine," Amelia replied, though her voice sounded strange even to her own ears. "How did the meeting with the installers go?" "Good progress. They think we will have the entire system operational by next week." The casual conversation felt surreal, given what Amelia now knew about Stephen's true motivations. She watched him move through the familiar motions of helping prepare dinner, wondering how long he had been planning to keep the truth from her. "Stephen," she said finally, "is there anything you want to tell me?" He looked up from the vegetables he was chopping, and she saw something flicker in his expression. "What do you mean? I mean, is there anything about our arrangement, our partnership, our relationship that you think I should know?" Stephen set down his knife and turned to face her fully. "Amelia, why are you asking me that?" "Because you have been acting strangely since you went to Chicago, and I get the feeling you are keeping something from me. I told you it was just old business complications involving my family." Stephen went very still. "What makes you ask that?" Amelia took a deep breath, knowing that her next words would fundamentally change their relationship. "I saw the folder on your desk, Stephen, the one marked Hayes Water Rights, 1994. The silence that followed was so complete that Amelia could hear the clock ticking in the living room. Stephen's face went through a series of expressions: shock, resignation, and something that looked like grief. "Amelia," he said quietly, "I can explain." "Can you?" she asked, surprised by how calm her voice sounded despite the turmoil in her chest. "Can you explain why you never mentioned that your father's company was responsible for my family losing access to our water supply 30 years ago? Can you explain why you presented your marriage proposal as a business opportunity when it was actually guilt-driven restitution?" Stephen moved toward her, but she stepped back, needing physical distance to process what she was feeling. "It started as restitution," Stephen admitted. "When I discovered the documents 3 years ago, I felt obligated to find some way to correct the injustice my father had caused your family. So you researched us. You planned this whole elaborate scheme to ease your family's conscience." "Yes," Stephen said, the single word falling between them like a stone. "But Amelia, what developed between us, that was never part of any plan. That was real." "How can I know what was real?" Amelia asked, feeling tears start to burn behind her eyes. "How can I trust anything about our relationship when it was built on a lie?" "It was not built on a lie," Stephen said desperately. "It was built on my genuine admiration for what you had accomplished, my respect for your expertise, and my growing feelings for you as a person. Feelings that conveniently aligned with your need to make amends for your father's actions." Stephen ran his hands through his hair, the gesture she had once found endearing now seeming like evidence of his deception. "Amelia, please. What I feel for you has nothing to do with my father, or water rights, or family guilt. I am in love with you." "Are you?" Amelia asked. "Or are you in love with the idea of transforming yourself from the villain's son into the hero of my story?" The pain that crossed Stephen's face was so genuine that for a moment Amelia almost believed his protestations of innocent love. But then she remembered the folder full of documents, the careful planning, the 3 years of research that had preceded his supposedly spontaneous marriage proposal. "I need some time to think," she said, moving toward the kitchen door. "Amelia, please do not leave like this. Let me explain everything. Let me show you the timeline. Let me prove to you that my feelings are genuine." "I cannot listen to any more explanations right now," Amelia said, her voice breaking slightly. "I need to process this, and I cannot do that with you here trying to convince me that your deception was actually a romantic gesture." She left Stephen standing in the kitchen and walked out into the evening air, needing the familiar comfort of her fields and the clarity that physical work sometimes provided. But as she walked through the rows of winter cover crops, she found herself questioning everything she thought she knew about her marriage, her partnership, and the man she had been falling in love with. The irrigation system Stephen had installed gleamed in the moonlight, a symbol of the progress they had made together. But now even that felt tainted by the knowledge that it had been funded by guilt rather than genuine investment in their shared future. For the second time in less than a year, Amelia found herself wondering if she was about to lose everything that mattered to her. But this time, the potential loss felt even more devastating because it involved not just her farm, but her heart. Amelia spent the night in her childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling and trying to reconcile the Stephen she thought she knew with the man who had orchestrated their entire relationship to assuage his family's historical guilt. She replayed every conversation, every gesture, every moment of growing intimacy, wondering what had been genuine and what had been performance. When dawn finally came, she found Stephen sitting at the kitchen table with 2 cups of coffee and a stack of documents. "I know you said you needed time to think," he said without looking up. "But I also know that you make better decisions when you have all the information. So I brought down everything related to the water rights situation. I want you to see the complete timeline, not just the fragments you found yesterday." Amelia poured herself coffee and sat across from him, maintaining the physical distance that felt necessary for emotional protection. "Start from the beginning," she said. Stephen opened the first folder and pulled out a document dated 2021. 3 years ago, I was having my father's old office renovated when the contractors found a filing cabinet that had been walled off during a previous remodeling. Inside were all the documents related to the Hayes water rights case. He showed her the legal briefs, court filings, and correspondence that detailed the 1994 dispute. "My father believed he was acting within his legal rights, but these letters show that he came to regret the impact on your family." Amelia read Thomas Thorne's private correspondence, seeing genuine remorse in his words about the consequences of his legal victory. "Why did he never send the letter to my grandfather?" she asked. "Pride, probably. Or maybe he convinced himself that what was done legally was done properly, regardless of the personal cost to your family." Stephen pulled out another set of documents. "After I found these files, I spent months researching your family's operation. Not as potential prey, but as a wrong that needed to be righted. The research was extensive. Articles about Hayes Family Farms organic certification, newspaper features about Amelia's agricultural innovations, financial records that showed the ongoing impact of losing access to their water supply. I discovered that your family had been paying premium rates for municipal water for 30 years because of my father's legal action. The additional costs had prevented you from making capital improvements that would have kept you competitive with larger operations. So you decided to fix it," Amelia said. "I decided to find a way to correct an injustice," Stephen replied. But I also discovered that Hayes Family Farm was exactly the kind of sustainable operation my company wanted to support. Your methods, your results, your commitment to environmental stewardship, it was everything I believed agriculture should become. Stephen opened another folder containing business projections and partnership models. I spent 2 years developing the business marriage concept, not specifically for you, but as a way to support family farms while protecting them from corporate takeover. But you never implemented it with anyone else. No, Stephen admitted. Because when I researched your specific situation, I realized that Hayes Family Farm was the perfect candidate for the first partnership. You needed capital, you had proven expertise, and you shared my commitment to sustainable practices. Amelia studied the documents, seeing the genuine business logic behind Stephen's proposal, alongside his personal motivation to correct his father's historical wrong. "When did it stop being about guilt?" she asked. Stephen was quiet for a long moment. "The first time I visited your farm and watched you explain your heritage seed preservation program, the passion in your voice, the depth of your knowledge, the way you made me understand that you were not just growing crops but nurturing the future of agriculture itself. That was before you proposed. That was when I realized I wanted to be part of what you were building, not just financially but personally. That was when the marriage proposal stopped being purely strategic and started being something I genuinely wanted." Amelia looked at this man who had saved her farm, supported her dreams, and somehow made her believe in possibilities she had never imagined. "How can I know which of your feelings are real and which are just elaborate guilt management?" Stephen reached across the table and took her hands, his touch as gentle as always. "Because if this was just about guilt, I would have written you a check 3 years ago and walked away with a clear conscience. Because if this was just about business, I would never have encouraged you to speak at conferences or develop your own professional reputation. Because if this was just about restitution, I would never have fallen in love with you." "Stephen, I know you have every right to doubt me," he continued. "I know I should have told you about the water rights situation from the beginning. But I was afraid that if you knew the historical connection, you would refuse my help out of pride or suspicion. You were probably right about that. And then, as we started working together, and I began to care about you as more than just a business partner, I was afraid that telling you would make you question everything between us. Which is exactly what happened." Stephen squeezed her hands gently. "Amelia, I cannot change the fact that guilt brought me to you initially, but I can promise you that everything that has developed between us since then has been completely genuine. The respect, the admiration, the partnership, the love, all of it is real." Amelia looked into Stephen's blue eyes, searching for any sign of deception or manipulation. What she saw was the same vulnerability and sincerity that had first convinced her to trust his unusual business proposal. "Oh, what happens now?" she asked. "That depends on whether you can forgive me for not being completely honest from the beginning," Stephen said, "and whether you believe that love can grow from complicated circumstances and still be authentic." Amelia pulled her hands free and stood, walking to the kitchen window that looked out over the fields they had been transforming together. The irrigation system was nearly complete. The solar panels were generating clean energy, and the soil monitoring equipment was providing data that would guide their planting decisions for years to come. "Stephen, do you understand why this is so difficult for me?" "Because you feel deceived, because I feel like a charity case," Amelia corrected. "Like your poor family friend who needs to be taken care of because of something that happened before I was even born." Stephen joined her at the window. "You are not a charity case. You are a brilliant agriculturalist who has built something remarkable despite facing challenges that would have defeated most people. The fact that some of those challenges were caused by my family's actions does not diminish your achievements, but it changes the context of our relationship. Does it? Stephen asked. Does knowing that I was initially motivated by guilt change the fact that you have taught me more about sustainable farming than I learned in 15 years of consulting? Does it change the fact that working with you has been the most fulfilling professional experience of my life? Does it change the fact that I look forward to our conversations every evening more than anything else in my day? Amelia turned to face him. What about the personal aspects? The fact that we were starting to build something romantic? That is for you to decide, Stephen said quietly. I know how I feel about you, and those feelings have nothing to do with water rights or family guilt. But I understand if you need time to determine whether you can trust those feelings or trust me. The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of revelation and the uncertainty of what their relationship could become now that all the secrets were exposed. I need some time, Amelia said finally. Not to end our business partnership, because that has been beneficial for both of us, regardless of your initial motivations. But I need time to sort out what I feel about the personal aspects of our relationship. Stephen nodded, though she could see the disappointment in his expression. I understand. And Amelia, while you are thinking, I want you to know that I will transfer the water rights back to your family, regardless of what you decide about us personally. That wrong should be corrected whether we stay married or not. You would do that? I should have done it 3 years ago when I first discovered the situation. The only reason I did not was that I wanted to be part of the solution in a more meaningful way. Amelia felt tears prick her eyes at the sincerity in Stephen's voice. Thank you. For what? For being honest with me now, even though it might cost you everything you wanted. Stephen's smile was sad but genuine. Amelia, what I want most is for you to be happy and successful. If that means we continue as business partners without the personal relationship, then I will accept that. Your friendship and professional respect mean more to me than my romantic hopes. That evening, Stephen moved his personal belongings back to his apartment in town, though he continued to maintain his office at the farm for business purposes. The physical separation felt strange after months of sharing daily routines, but Amelia knew she needed emotional distance to think clearly about their future. As she watched his truck disappear down the driveway, she wondered if she was making the right decision. But she also knew that any relationship worth having had to be built on complete honesty and mutual choice, not guilt and historical obligation. The question she faced now was whether love that had grown from complicated circumstances could still be authentic, and whether she could trust her heart to guide her toward the right answer. 2 weeks passed in a strange dance of professional courtesy and personal distance. Stephen arrived each morning to monitor the irrigation system and coordinate with his technical team, but their interactions remained carefully neutral. He was polite, efficient, and respectful of the emotional space Amelia had requested, but she could see the strain in his eyes and the careful way he chose his words. Amelia threw herself into farm operations with an intensity that bordered on obsession. She spent long days in the fields, meticulously documenting crop rotations and soil conditions, anything to avoid thinking about the hollow feeling in her chest whenever Stephen's truck pulled into the driveway. The successful completion of the irrigation system should have been cause for celebration, but instead it felt like a reminder of everything that had become complicated between them. Margaret Chen visited on a grey December afternoon, finding Amelia in the greenhouse, obsessively reorganizing seed storage containers that were already perfectly organized. "You look terrible," Margaret said without preamble, settling onto a work stool with the directness that made her an excellent veterinarian and an occasionally uncomfortable friend. "Thank you for that honest assessment," Amelia replied, not looking up from the seed packets she was sorting by planting date for the 3rd time that week. Amelia, what are you doing? I am preparing for spring planting season. It is December. Spring planting is 4 months away. Margaret reached over and took the seed packets from Amelia's hands. What you are doing is avoiding dealing with your feelings about Stephen. Amelia finally looked at her friend, and Margaret was struck by the exhaustion and confusion in her eyes. Margaret, I do not know what to feel. I thought I was falling in love with a man who chose me for who I am, but it turns out he chose me because of what his family did to mine 30 years ago. And that changes how you feel about him. It changes everything, Amelia said, sinking onto another work stool. How can I trust that his feelings are genuine when our entire relationship was built on his guilt about something that happened before I was even born? Margaret considered this carefully. Can I ask you something that might sound harsh? Go ahead. Do you think you are using Stephen's initial motivations as an excuse to protect yourself from getting hurt? Amelia stared at her friend. What do you mean? I mean that you have spent your entire adult life building walls around your heart to protect yourself from disappointment. Your mother's death, the pressure of saving the farm, the responsibility of carrying on your family's legacy, all of it has made you afraid to trust anyone with your emotional well-being. That is not true. Is it not? Margaret challenged gently. When was the last time before Stephen that you allowed yourself to be vulnerable with someone? When was the last time you let someone take care of you instead of the other way around? Amelia opened her mouth to argue, then closed it as she realized she could not answer Margaret's questions. Stephen's initial motivations do not erase the fact that he has spent months proving his genuine care for you, Margaret continued. They do not erase the way he listens when you talk about your work, or the way he has supported your professional development, or the way he looks at you when he thinks no one is watching. But how can I know what is real? The same way you know anything about another person's feelings, Margaret replied. By paying attention to their actions over time, by observing whether their behavior matches their words, by trusting your instincts about their character. Before Amelia could respond, they heard Stephen's voice outside the greenhouse, speaking with unusual formality to someone she did not recognize. Miss Hayes, could I speak with you for a moment? Stephen called through the greenhouse door. I have someone here who needs to meet with you. Amelia stepped outside to find Stephen standing with a woman in an expensive suit who looked like she belonged in a corporate boardroom rather than a farmyard. Amelia, this is Linda Patterson from Patterson Legal Services, Stephen said. She has some documents that require your signature. What kind of documents? Amelia asked, immediately suspicious of any legal matter involving Stephen after their recent revelations. Linda Patterson opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Miss Hayes, I am here to facilitate the transfer of water rights for the artesian well that supplies your property. Mr. Thorne has requested that full ownership and access rights be restored to your family immediately. Amelia felt her breath catch. What? Stephen stepped forward, his expression serious but gentle. The water rights that my father's company obtained in 1994 belong with your family. I am transferring them back to you unconditionally, with no strings attached and no expectation of anything in return. Stephen, you do not have to do this. Yes, I do, he replied firmly. This is not about our personal relationship or our business partnership. This is about correcting an injustice that should have been addressed years ago. Linda Patterson spread the legal documents on a makeshift table Stephen had set up using sawhorses and a piece of plywood. The transfer is structured to ensure that Hayes Family Farm has permanent, irrevocable access to the water supply, regardless of any changes in ownership or partnership arrangements. Amelia read through the documents, her legal training from college allowing her to understand the significance of what Stephen was offering. The water rights were worth at least $200,000, and their restoration would save her family thousands of dollars annually in municipal water costs. Stephen, this is an enormous financial sacrifice. It is not a sacrifice, Stephen said quietly. It is returning something that never should have been taken in the first place. Margaret, who had been listening from the greenhouse doorway, stepped forward. Amelia, do you understand what this means? What do you mean? I mean that Stephen is proving his intentions have nothing to do with maintaining control over you or your farm. He is giving you something valuable with no guarantee that it will benefit him in any way. Amelia looked at Stephen, searching his face for any sign of manipulation or hidden agenda. What she saw was the same sincere determination that had impressed her during his first visit to the farm. "Why are you doing this now?" she asked. "Because I realized that our relationship can never move forward as long as you question whether my feelings are motivated by guilt or obligation," Stephen replied. "I want you to know that everything I feel for you exists independently of this historical issue. And if I sign these papers and still decide that our marriage should remain purely professional," Stephen met her gaze steadily, "then you will have your water rights restored, and I will have done what I should have done 3 years ago when I first discovered the situation. You would be satisfied with that outcome." "I would be heartbroken," Stephen said honestly. "But I would respect your decision and be grateful that I was able to correct this injustice." Linda Patterson cleared her throat diplomatically. "I should mention that Mr. Thorne has also established a fund to compensate your family for the 30 years of additional water costs caused by the original legal action." "How much?" Amelia asked faintly. "Based on our calculations, approximately $150,000, including interest." Amelia felt her knees go weak. Stephen was not just returning the water rights, he was providing financial restitution for 3 decades of economic impact on her family. "Stephen, this is too much. It is exactly what your family is owed," Stephen replied. "My father may have acted within his legal rights, but that does not mean the outcome was just." Margaret moved to stand beside Amelia, offering silent support as her friend processed the magnitude of Stephen's gesture. "If I sign these documents," Amelia said slowly, "our business partnership could continue even if our personal relationship ends." "Yes," Stephen confirmed. "The water rights transfer is completely separate from our marriage contract or business arrangements. It belongs to you and your family, regardless of what happens between us, personally." Amelia picked up the pen Linda Patterson offered, her hand trembling slightly as she signed document after document. With each signature, she felt the weight of 30 years of family financial struggle lifting from her shoulders. When the final document was signed and notarized, Linda Patterson gathered the papers with professional efficiency. "The transfer will be recorded with the county within 48 hours. Congratulations, Miss Hayes. Your family's water rights have been fully restored." After Linda Patterson left, Amelia and Stephen stood in awkward silence while Margaret diplomatically retreated to the greenhouse to give them privacy. "Stephen, I do not know what to say." "You do not have to say anything," Stephen replied. "This was something that needed to be done regardless of our personal situation. But you did it now, while we are struggling with trust issues, because you wanted to prove something to me." Stephen was quiet for a long moment. "I did it now because I realized that I never want you to wonder whether my feelings for you are authentic. I want you to know that even if you decide our marriage should remain purely professional, I will still consider myself fortunate to have been part of preserving Hayes family farm." Amelia felt tears prick her eyes at the sincerity in his voice. "Stephen, do you understand what you have just given up? I understand that I have returned something that rightfully belonged to your family and should never have been taken in the first place. That is not what I mean." Amelia stepped closer to him, close enough to see the flecks of silver in his blue eyes. "I mean, do you understand that you have just proven beyond any doubt that your feelings for me have nothing to do with guilt or obligation?" Stephen's breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that a man motivated by guilt would have offered to share the water rights or provided partial compensation. A man motivated by self-interest would have made the transfer contingent on our relationship continuing." Amelia reached up and touched his face gently. "But a man motivated by genuine love would do exactly what you just did. He would give everything without asking for anything in return." "Amelia, I have been an idiot," she continued, her voice breaking slightly. "I was so afraid of being pitied or patronized that I could not see what was right in front of me. You are not trying to rescue me or assuage your family's guilt. You are trying to build a life with someone you respect and love." Stephen covered her hand with his own, pressing it against his cheek. "I am desperately in love with you," he said quietly. "Everything I feel for you is real and has been real since the day I watched you explain heritage seed preservation with such passion that I forgot to breathe." "I am desperately in love with you too," Amelia whispered. "And I'm sorry I let fear and pride make me question something that should have been obvious." Stephen pulled her into his arms, holding her close enough that she could feel his heart beating against her chest. "Does this mean we can stop pretending this is just a business arrangement?" "This stopped being just a business arrangement months ago," Amelia replied, looking up into his eyes. "I think it stopped being just business the moment you rolled up your sleeves and got your hands dirty working beside me in the fields." "I love working beside you," Stephen said, stroking her hair. "I love watching you solve problems and seeing your face light up when you talk about sustainable agriculture. I love the way you make me want to be better than I thought I could be. Stephen, will you come home, not just to your office upstairs, but home to me?" "I have been waiting for you to ask me that question for 2 weeks," Stephen said with a smile that made Amelia's heart skip. "Yes, I will come home to you." When Stephen kissed her this time, it was not the gentle, tentative kiss of two people testing new waters. It was the kiss of two people who had found their way through doubt and fear to something real and lasting and worth fighting for. Margaret appeared at the greenhouse door, took one look at them, and smiled with deep satisfaction. "It is about time you two figured out what was obvious to everyone else." That evening, as Stephen moved his belongings back into the farmhouse, Amelia felt a sense of completeness she had never experienced before. They were no longer business partners pretending their feelings did not exist, or spouses wondering if their relationship was built on genuine emotion. They were two people who had chosen each other honestly and completely, with full knowledge of their complicated history and absolute faith in their shared future. "So," Stephen said as they shared dinner at the kitchen table where they had signed their original business contract 6 months earlier, "what happens now?" "Now we build the life we both want," Amelia replied, reaching across the table to take his hand. "Together, even if it gets complicated. Especially if it gets complicated," Amelia said with a smile. "I have learned that the best things in life usually are." Outside, the winter wind moved through the bare branches of the oak trees that had shaded 6 generations of Hayes family members. But inside the farmhouse, everything was warm and bright and full of promise for the future they would create together. Spring arrived early that year, and with it came a flurry of activity that transformed Hayes Thorne Sustainable Farms into something that exceeded even Stephen's most optimistic projections. The precision irrigation system had reduced their water usage by 42% while increasing crop yields by 30%. The renewable energy infrastructure was generating more power than they consumed, allowing them to sell excess electricity back to the grid. But most remarkably, their success had attracted attention from agricultural researchers, policymakers, and farmers from across the region who wanted to learn from their innovative approach to sustainable farming. "We have 17 farm visits scheduled for this month alone," Amelia said, reviewing the calendar over breakfast. "And 3 universities want to establish research partnerships with us. Are you comfortable with that level of public attention?" Stephen asked, refilling her coffee cup with the automatic care that had become second nature during their months of genuine partnership. "I'm getting used to it," Amelia replied, "and I think it is important to share what we have learned. If our methods can help other family farms become more sustainable and profitable, then we have an obligation to teach them." Stephen smiled at the way she said "our methods," unconsciously acknowledging that their operation had become truly collaborative. "The documentary crew wants to return next month to film the final segments. Have you decided how much personal information you want to include?" They had been discussing this question for weeks. The documentary filmmaker wanted to focus on their marriage as much as their agricultural innovations, presenting their relationship as proof that personal and professional partnerships could create extraordinary results. "I think we should be honest about our story," Stephen said. "Not every detail, but the basic truth that we met through business, discovered we shared values and goals, and found that our professional partnership developed into a personal one." "What about the historical connection between our families?" Stephen considered this carefully. "I think we mentioned that our families had previous business dealings that created some initial complications, but that we were able to resolve those issues and move forward together. That is truthful, without being sensational." "Exactly." Stephen reached across the table and took her hand, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "I want people to see that sustainable agriculture is not just environmentally important, it is economically viable and personally fulfilling, and that the best partnerships are built on mutual respect and shared purpose. Even when they start in unconventional ways," Stephen added with a smile. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the kitchen door. Through the window, they could see Frank Morrison holding a thick envelope and wearing the expression of someone with significant news to share. "Good morning, Frank," Amelia said, opening the door. "Would you like some coffee?" "That would be wonderful," Frank replied, settling into the chair he had occupied during their legal discussions nearly 8 months earlier. "I have something that I think will interest both of you." He opened the envelope and pulled out an official-looking document with multiple seals and signatures. "This is a certificate of recognition from the Illinois Department of Agriculture. Hayes Thorne's Sustainable Farms has been selected as the state's outstanding example of innovative agricultural practices." Amelia and Stephen exchanged delighted glances. "What does that mean practically?" Stephen asked. "It means you will be featured in state publications, invited to speak at agricultural conferences, and eligible for additional grants and support programs," Frank explained. "But more importantly, it means that your operation is now considered a model for other farms throughout the state." "Frank, this is incredible news," Amelia said, feeling a surge of pride in what they had accomplished together. "There is more," Frank continued with a smile. "The United States Department of Agriculture has requested permission to conduct a case study of your operation for their National Sustainable Farming Initiative." Stephen sat back in his chair, looking stunned. "A federal case study. They want to document your methods, your results, and your business model for distribution to agricultural extension offices nationwide. If they approve your methods, Hayes Thorne's Sustainable Farms could become the template for sustainable agriculture programs across the country." Amelia felt tears prick her eyes as she contemplated the magnitude of what Frank was describing. 8 months ago, she had been facing the loss of her family farm. Now, that same farm was being recognized as a national model for agricultural innovation. "How did this happen so quickly?" she asked. "Your presentation at the Minneapolis conference created quite a stir in agricultural policy circles," Frank explained. "Then the preliminary results from your operation were shared at several professional conferences. The word spread that a small family farm in Illinois had achieved remarkable sustainability metrics without sacrificing profitability." "And our marriage?" Stephen asked. "How do federal agencies view business partnerships structured as marriages?" Frank smiled. "They view it as an innovative approach to protecting family farm heritage while accessing necessary capital and technology. Several agricultural economists have written papers analyzing your model as a potential solution to the crisis facing small farms nationwide." After Frank left, Amelia and Stephen sat in the kitchen, trying to process the transformation their lives had undergone in less than a year. "Stephen, do you realize what this means?" Amelia asked. "It means that what we built here is going to help preserve family farms across the country. It means that our unconventional beginning has led to something that could change American agriculture." Stephen pulled Amelia into his arms, holding her close as they contemplated the future they were creating together. "Are you ready for that level of responsibility? As long as I have you as my partner, I am ready for anything," Amelia replied, looking up into the blue eyes that had become home to her. "Even congressional testimony about sustainable farming practices." "Even congressional testimony," Amelia confirmed with a laugh, "though I reserve the right to be nervous about it." "I will be nervous with you," Stephen promised. "We can be nervous together and then figure out how to explain sustainable agriculture to politicians who have probably never set foot on a working farm." That afternoon, they walked through their fields together, observing the early spring growth and planning the season ahead. The irrigation lines lay hidden beneath the soil, ready to deliver precise amounts of water to each crop. The solar panels gleamed in the sunshine, converting light into the energy that powered their operation. The soil monitoring sensors sent continuous data to Stephen's computer, allowing them to optimize growing conditions in real time. But more than the technology, more than the recognition, more than the success they had achieved, what struck Amelia most powerfully was the sense of partnership that had developed between them. They moved through the farm with synchronized efficiency, each anticipating the other's needs and contributing complementary expertise to every decision. "Stephen, can I tell you something?" "Always." "A year ago, if someone had told me that the solution to my problems would come in the form of a marriage proposal from a stranger, I would have laughed at them. And now I understand that the best solutions often come in unexpected packages." Amelia stopped walking and turned to face him fully. "You saved my farm, but more than that, you helped me see possibilities I never could have imagined on my own. You transformed my understanding of what agriculture could be," Stephen replied. "You showed me that business success and environmental stewardship are not just compatible, they are inseparable. We make a good team. We make an extraordinary team," Stephen corrected. "And I cannot wait to see what we build together next." As the sun set over fields that hummed with the quiet efficiency of sustainable technology, Amelia reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. Their relationship had begun with a desperate crisis and an unconventional solution. It had developed through professional respect and personal discovery. It had survived the revelation of complicated motivations and the test of absolute honesty. And now it had evolved into something that was simultaneously a marriage, a business partnership, and a shared mission to prove that sustainable agriculture was not just environmentally necessary, but economically superior. "Stephen, do you think we are living proof that love can grow from practical beginnings?" "I think we are living proof that the best relationships are built on mutual respect, shared values, and the courage to be completely honest with each other, Stephen replied. Everything else is just details. That night, as they prepared for bed in the farmhouse that had sheltered 6 generations of Hayes family members and now welcomed Stephen as a permanent member of that legacy, Amelia felt a contentment she had never imagined possible. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, and new responsibilities, but they would face everything together, as equal partners in every sense of the word. And that, Amelia thought as she fell asleep beside the man who had become her husband in every way that mattered, was exactly how the best love stories were supposed to unfold. The documentary premiered on a warm June evening at the Hayes Community Center, drawing an audience that included farmers, local business owners, agricultural researchers, and government officials. Amelia felt nervous butterflies in her stomach as she and Stephen took their seats in the front row, watching their story unfold on screen for the first time. The film opened with sweeping shots of their fields, the camera capturing the geometric precision of the irrigation lines and the gleaming efficiency of the solar panel arrays. But quickly, the focus shifted to the human story behind the technology, beginning with Amelia explaining the financial crisis that had threatened her family's farm. "We had been farming this land for 6 generations," her image on screen said, but traditional methods were no longer sufficient to compete in the modern agricultural market. We needed to innovate or lose everything. The documentary moved chronologically through their story, showing Stephen's first visit to the farm, their business marriage ceremony, and the installation of the sustainable technology that had transformed their operation. What struck Amelia most powerfully was how natural their partnership looked on film, how seamlessly they worked together and supported each other's expertise. The business marriage concept provided legal and financial advantages that neither of us could have achieved independently, Stephen's image explained to the interviewer. But more importantly, it allowed us to combine complementary skills and resources in service of a shared vision. The film showed them working side by side in the fields, Stephen's corporate background evident in his systematic approach to problem solving. Amelia's generational knowledge, visible in her intuitive understanding of soil and weather patterns. Their professional respect was obvious, but so was the personal affection that had developed between them. What started as a strategic partnership evolved into something much deeper, Amelia heard herself saying on screen. We discovered that the best business relationships are built on the same foundations as the best personal relationships: trust, communication, and mutual support. The documentary concluded with footage of their farm's current success, the statistical improvements in water usage and crop yields, the economic benefits of energy independence, and the national attention their model had attracted. But the final shots focused on Amelia and Stephen walking through their fields at sunset, their body language speaking of complete comfort and partnership. Agricultural innovation requires more than just new technology, Stephen's voice narrated over the closing images. It requires people who are willing to take risks, challenge conventional wisdom, and commit themselves completely to a shared vision of what farming can become. We learned that the most powerful partnerships are built not on convenience or necessity, but on genuine respect and shared values. Amelia's voice added, "When 2 people bring their best skills and deepest commitment to a common purpose, extraordinary things become possible." The audience applauded enthusiastically as the credits rolled, and Amelia felt Stephen reach for her hand in the darkness of the community center. During the reception that followed, they were surrounded by farmers eager to learn about their methods, researchers interested in studying their results, and government officials exploring policy implications of their success. "Mr. and Mrs. Thorne," said Congressman Bradley Walsh, who had driven down from Chicago specifically to attend the premiere. "I want you to know that your operation has caught the attention of the House Agriculture Committee. We are very interested in discussing how your model might be supported and replicated through federal programs." "We would be honored to share our experience," Stephen replied, his arm around Amelia's waist in a gesture that had become automatic. Sustainable agriculture is not just good environmental policy, it is good economic policy. "And it works for family farms of all sizes," Amelia added. "The technology can be scaled to fit different operations, but the basic principles remain the same." Margaret Chen appeared at Amelia's elbow, grinning with obvious delight. "How does it feel to be famous?" "Surreal," Amelia admitted. 6 months ago, I was struggling to keep the farm afloat. Now people are calling us agricultural pioneers." "You are agricultural pioneers," said Dr. Elizabeth Martinez, a researcher from the University of Illinois. "Your results have exceeded every projection. We have 3 graduate students who want to write their dissertations on your methods." As the evening progressed, Amelia found herself thinking about the journey that had brought them to this moment of recognition and celebration. The desperate phone call to Frank Morrison, Stephen's unexpected proposal, the careful negotiation of their business marriage, the gradual development of genuine love, the crisis of trust, and the difficult path back to honesty. Every challenge had strengthened their partnership. Every success had deepened their commitment to each other and their shared vision. They had built something extraordinary, not despite their unconventional beginning, but because of their willingness to embrace unconventional solutions. "Penny for your thoughts," Stephen said, joining her on the community center's back porch, where she had stepped outside for a moment of quiet reflection. "I was thinking about how impossible this all would have seemed a year ago," Amelia replied, leaning into his warmth. "The success, the recognition, the fact that we are genuinely happy together. Do you regret any of it?" "Not a single moment," Amelia said without hesitation. "Even the difficult parts, even the crisis when I discovered the historical connection between our families, it all led us to where we are now." Stephen pulled her closer, his chin resting on top of her head. "Where we are now is exactly where I want to be for the rest of my life. Building sustainable farms and changing agricultural policy. Building a life with you," Stephen corrected. "Everything else is just the setting for that love story." Through the community center windows, they could see the reception continuing, farmers and researchers and government officials discussing the future of American agriculture. Their work had sparked conversations and inspired innovations that would extend far beyond their own farm. But standing on the porch in the warm June evening, surrounded by the familiar sounds and scents of the countryside that had shaped Amelia's entire life, what mattered most was the man whose love had made all of their success possible. "Stephen, do you think we have proven that business marriages can become real love stories?" "I think we have proven that love can grow from any foundation as long as both people are committed to honesty, respect, and shared purpose," Stephen replied. "We have proven that the best partnerships are built on bringing out the best in each other, and that sometimes the most practical decisions turn out to be the most romantic ones, especially when they involve marrying the person who challenges you to become better than you thought you could be." Amelia turned in Stephen's arms to face him fully, seeing in his expression the same mixture of love and determination that had convinced her to trust his unconventional proposal a year earlier. "I love you, Stephen Thorne." "I love you too, Amelia Hayes Thorne, and I cannot wait to see what we build together next." Their kiss was interrupted by applause from inside the community center, and they realized that someone had spotted them through the window. Instead of feeling embarrassed, Amelia laughed and waved to their audience, feeling proud of the love story they had created together. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities. The federal case study, the congressional testimony, the expansion of their sustainable farming model to other operations across the country. But tonight, they were simply a husband and wife who had found their way to genuine happiness through unconventional means and unwavering commitment to each other. As they walked back inside to rejoin their celebration, Amelia reflected on the truth that would anchor everything they built together going forward. The most extraordinary love stories are not always the most conventional ones, but they are always built on foundations of mutual respect, shared values, and the courage to choose each other completely. 2 years later, Amelia stood at the podium of the National Agricultural Conference in Washington, D.C., looking out at an audience of 800 farmers, researchers, policymakers, and agricultural industry leaders. The woman who had once been terrified of speaking to a small panel in Minneapolis now commanded the attention of the nation's most influential agricultural audience. "When my husband first proposed to me," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the convention center auditorium, "he told me he wanted to combine our businesses through marriage. I thought he was either crazy or desperate." The audience laughed, and Amelia smiled at the memory of that shocking conversation on her farmhouse porch. "What I discovered is that he was visionary. He saw possibilities that I could not imagine, and he was willing to take unprecedented risks to prove that sustainable agriculture is not just environmentally necessary, but economically superior." In the front row, Stephen beamed with pride as his wife commanded the stage with the confidence of someone who had become comfortable sharing her expertise with the world. The Hayes-Thorne Sustainable Farms model has now been implemented by over 200 family farms across 37 states, Amelia continued. These operations have collectively reduced water usage by an average of 38%, increased crop yields by 29%, and achieved complete energy independence within an average of 18 months. The statistics represented more than numbers to Amelia. They represented families who had been able to preserve their agricultural heritage while building economically viable futures. They represented environmental progress that was measured not just in reduced carbon emissions, but in healthier soil, cleaner water, and more diverse ecosystems. But more than the technical achievements, what excites me most about this movement is the human element. We have proven that innovation does not require abandoning tradition. We have shown that environmental stewardship and economic success are not competing priorities. And we have demonstrated that the best partnerships, whether in business or in life, are built on mutual respect and shared commitment to something larger than individual benefit. After her presentation, Amelia was surrounded by farmers eager to learn about implementation strategies, researchers interested in data collection methods, and policymakers exploring legislative support for sustainable agriculture initiatives. "Mrs. Thorne," said Senator Rebecca Collins, chair of the Senate Agriculture Committee, "your presentation has convinced me that we need to make sustainable farming technology more accessible to family farms. What kind of federal support would make the biggest difference? Low-interest loans for infrastructure development, tax incentives for renewable energy installation, and technical assistance programs to help farmers adapt the technology to their specific operations." Amelia replied without hesitation. "The technology exists and the economic benefits are proven. We just need to make it financially accessible to farmers who want to make the transition." Stephen appeared at her side, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the expression of complete admiration that never failed to make Amelia's heart skip. "How did it feel to address the most important agricultural policy audience in the country?" he asked, as they found a quiet corner of the convention center lobby. like I was representing every family farmer who refuses to give up on the possibility of building something sustainable and profitable, Amelia replied. Like I was speaking for everyone who believes that innovation and tradition can grow together. You were magnificent, Stephen said, the same words he had used after her first conference presentation in Minneapolis. I am so proud of what you have accomplished. What we have accomplished, Amelia corrected. None of this would have been possible without your vision, your investment, and your willingness to take a chance on an unconventional partnership. They were interrupted by the approach of a young couple who looked nervous but determined. "Excuse me," the woman said. "Are you Amelia and Stephen Thorne?" "We are," Stephen replied with a welcoming smile. "My name is Jessica Martinez, and this is my husband Carlos. We own a small organic farm in Colorado, and we have been trying to figure out how to implement your irrigation system. We saw the documentary about your farm," Carlos added, "and we were wondering if you might be willing to visit our operation and help us adapt your methods to our specific situation." Amelia and Stephen exchanged glances, remembering their own early days when every decision felt overwhelming and every investment represented a leap of faith. "We would be honored to visit your farm," Amelia said warmly. "Sustainable agriculture works best when it is adapted to local conditions and specific crop requirements." "Really?" Jessica's face lit up with excitement. "You would come to Colorado?" "We travel to farms all over the country," Stephen explained. "Part of our mission is to help other operations implement sustainable practices successfully." As they exchanged contact information with the young couple, Amelia reflected on how natural it had become to think of their work as a mission rather than just a business. They had discovered that success was most fulfilling when it served purposes larger than personal benefit. That evening, in their hotel room overlooking the Potomac River, Stephen and Amelia reviewed the day's conversations and planned their schedule for the remainder of the conference. "We received 12 requests for farm visits today," Stephen said, updating their travel calendar, "and 6 universities want to establish research partnerships with us." "Are you comfortable with that level of expansion?" Amelia asked, curling up beside him on the hotel room couch. "As long as we maintain our focus on helping family farms rather than building a corporate empire," Stephen replied. "I never want our success to change our fundamental values." "What are our fundamental values?" Stephen considered the question seriously. "Environmental stewardship, family heritage preservation, community support, and the belief that business success should strengthen relationships rather than compromise them. Those sound like good values to build a life on." "They are the values we have built our life on," Stephen observed. "They are the reason our marriage works, our business succeeds, and our work makes a positive difference in the world." Amelia looked at this man who had transformed from a stranger with an outrageous proposal into the partner she could not imagine living without. Their relationship had evolved through every possible phase: business colleagues, reluctant spouses, genuine friends, romantic partners, and finally, life companions whose personal and professional goals had become completely integrated. "Stephen, do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not found those documents in your father's office?" "I think I would have found some other reason to seek out Hayes Family Farm," Stephen replied without hesitation. "Your operation was exactly the kind of innovative, sustainable farming that I wanted to support. The historical connection between our families may have motivated the timing, but it was not the reason I wanted to partner with you." "How can you be sure?" "Because everything I admired about your work, everything that convinced me you were the perfect partner, had nothing to do with water rights or family history. It had to do with your expertise, your innovation, your commitment to sustainability, and your willingness to preserve tradition while embracing necessary change. Amelia nestled closer to Stephen, feeling the familiar contentment that came from being completely understood and appreciated by the person who mattered most to her. "I am grateful for the complicated way we found each other," she said. "I am grateful for your father's regret about the water rights situation, for your discovery of those documents, for your guilt that motivated you to research our farm. Why? Because it brought you to me at exactly the moment when I needed someone who could see possibilities I could not imagine on my own. Because it created the circumstances that allowed us to build something extraordinary together, even though it caused a crisis of trust that nearly ended our relationship. Especially because of that," Amelia said firmly. "That crisis forced us to be completely honest with each other about our motivations, our feelings, and our hopes for the future. It ensured that our relationship is built on truth rather than convenient assumptions." Stephen pulled her closer, his arms creating the sense of home and safety that had become as essential to Amelia as air and water. "What do you think our life will look like 5 years from now?" he asked. "I think we will be helping family farms across the country implement sustainable practices. I think we will be raising children who understand that the most important work involves making the world better for future generations. I think we will still be discovering new ways that personal and professional partnerships can create extraordinary results." "Children?" Stephen asked, his voice filled with hope and excitement. "I cannot think of anyone I would rather raise children with than someone who shares my values, supports my dreams, and proves every day that love is best expressed through actions rather than words." Stephen kissed the top of her head, his contentment evident in the way he held her. "I love you, Amelia Hayes Thorne. I love the life we have built together, and I love the future we are going to create." "I love you too, Stephen. And I love that we have proven love can grow from the most practical beginnings into something that exceeds every romantic fantasy." Outside their hotel window, the lights of Washington, D.C. reflected the power and possibility of American democracy. Inside their room, two people who had found their way to extraordinary love through unconventional means planned a future that would extend their partnership's benefits far beyond their own happiness. They had started as strangers, united by crisis and convenience. They had become partners bound by shared values and mutual respect, and they had evolved into life companions whose love story proved that the most powerful relationships are built not on passion alone, but on the foundation of bringing out the best in each other while serving purposes larger than individual benefit. As they prepared for bed in the hotel room, there was just another temporary stop in their shared journey. Amelia reflected on the truth that had guided every decision in their relationship. The best love stories are not fairy tales, but real-life partnerships between people who choose each other completely and build something meaningful together. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities to share their knowledge, support other family farms, and extend the positive impact of their unconventional beginning. But tonight, they were simply a husband and wife who had discovered that business marriages can become the most authentic love stories of all. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.